Good afternoon, viewers of 7 News Television. It's always a pleasure for me to know that you guys are over there watching this program, Experts. Governance has been something that most African countries find it difficult. Talking about environmental governance is getting to the worst situation. Many are ideas on papers, but the implementation is quite difficult. The question that people ask is, what can be the reason why African countries are unable to implement good governance in the environmental sector? We are going to get details about this with our guests for the day, Mr. Augustine Jamsi. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Dakan.
So, who is Mr. Augustine?
Augustine Jamshi is a jurist, an environmentalist. I am the Executive Secretary of the Bioresources Development and Conservation Program Cameroon,
Okay.
which is an organization that was created in 1994,
Okay.
advocating for policies, research, and advocacy in the biodiversity sector, environmental governance in general, and policies. At the same time, I am the pioneer chair of the Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance, which is a network of climate change organizations, more than 400 networks across 45 countries of Africa that has been advocating for climate justice around Africa. I have also been the UNEP Governing Council representative for Africa for 2 terms, and I've also been the coordinator of Francophone Africa for the Access Initiative, which is on environmental democracy or environmental governance, and a little bit of many other things that I will not say now, but not without forgetting the fact that I have also been the African Civil Society representative on the World Bank Forest Carbon Partnership Facility for the last 2 terms.
A lot about the environment. Today, we are talking of environmental governance. What is environmental governance?
Yeah, grossly saying, there is no unique or no generally accepted definition of environmental governance. But generally, when we talk of environmental governance, it is that process by which decisions concerning the environment are taken for the well-being of the environment itself and the people that live in the environment. Basically, we have 3 components actually of environmental governance.
All right.
When you're talking about environmental governance, you're talking of, first of all, of the actors, the rules, and the practice.
Okay.
For the actors, it could be the government, the population, the private sector, civil society organizations, everybody that has something to do with the environment. And then for the rules, what rules are there? What laws do we have? What regulations that guide these actors in the management of environmental decision making? Finally, the practice is about putting the rules and the actors together.
Okay.
Do they actually apply those rules? Do those actors apply the rules? And if yes, for what result? Going further, there are general principles. As I said, first of all, there is no perfect definition, a standalone definition of environmental governance. But if you go by the principles, there are about 5 principles of environmental governance. First of all, it has to do with participation,
Okay.
transparency, accountability, coordination, and of course, capacity. So all of those things put together, those principles and the components put together, build what we call environmental governance or environmental democracy in general.
You've talked about 6 principles.
Yeah, 5 principles.
Okay, let me just go to one of them, transparency. How can a country apply transparency in order to achieve good governance in the environment?
Yeah, transparency is a cardinal principle in environmental governance because of the fact that when everything is transparent, it is much more acceptable to the population and to every actor.
All right.
Like it is said, in general, you cannot light a candle and put it under the table. Everything that is good is transparent.
Okay.
When you put it on the table, everybody accepts the outcome. Remember, environmental decision making or governance is not about the adequacy of the final decision. You can have a very good final decision, a very good law. But governance is more of how you get to that decision, the process by which you got to that decision. That's where governance counts. So it cannot be opaque. It cannot be under the table. Okay?
Yeah.
If we look at the various regulations in this country, look at our constitution. 1996 constitution, it says every Cameroonian has a right to a clean and healthy environment,
Yeah.
the protection of which is the duty of every citizen. And it goes further to say, still in the preamble, to say that the government has to improve the environment. So you see many actors there.
Yeah.
That is the role in its own. And then the citizens and the government.
Yeah.
Okay? So those put together. And remember, by virtue of Article 65 of that Constitution, it says the preamble is part and parcel of the Constitution,
yeah.
meaning that it's justiciable. Okay? So the strength of the preamble is the same with every other article in the Constitution by virtue of Article 65. So in it, it's calling for every Cameroonian. They have a right to a clean and healthy environment. But again, they have a duty to protect that environment. And then the government has a duty to improve on the environment for the health of the people. So if there is no transparency, about decisions about the environment, how can the citizens participate in protecting that environment? So the issue of transparency is very, very important. And it goes with participation. It goes with information. You have to know what is happening in order to participate effectively. Okay?
Yeah.
So,
I'm getting a lot of knowledge from you concerning the environment.
thank you.
Let's go to the forest zone, okay?
Yeah.
Where some of these people, the natives, they call the indigenous people, who in a way hardly participate in the environmental development. You as a specialist, what is being done or has to be done in order that these indigenous people who have all the raw materials but yet they are like neglected? What environmental principles or laws should be made or put in place in order that they too should benefit from the environmental development?
Yeah, it is. I think the concept of the indigenous people has not just come today. I remember when there was a time for the negotiation of the Convention on Biological Diversity and the 3 Rio Conventions. There were many talks about indigenous people. Who is indigenous? Who is not indigenous? But that argument has been put to rest because we know they are indigenous people.
Yeah.
In Cameroon, we have well stated, well-recognized indigenous peoples that you are talking about. And if you look at the ILO 169, it defines the indigenous people. So we find them in Cameroon. If you look at the Biodiversity Convention itself, the Convention on Biological Diversity, which was signed in Rio in 1992, and Cameroon is one of them, it says in Article 8J that the indigenous knowledge or traditional knowledge and the ways of life of the people have to be respected and taken into account when conserving and utilizing biodiversity. So there's this armada of international conventions that I'm just citing a few that Cameroon is party to. Okay? And if you look at Article 45 of our Constitution, it states very clearly that all international conventions or treaties duly ratified by Cameroon can be directly applied on the country, and it takes precedence over national law.
Okay.
This means where there is a conflict between an international treaty duly ratified by Cameroon and a national law, the international convention takes precedence. So going by that and following all the conventions that Cameroon has signed, we think the issue of indigenous people is very, very important. And it's not only indigenous people, but local communities. Okay? Now, coming to your question, how are they participating in environmental decision making in the country? We have to look at these things with a lot of caution and sympathy with our context. And I want to make it clear that we are coming from a context where modern environmental protection as practiced by some of the post-colonial African countries was based on colonial principles, which to a greater extent did not take into consideration the knowledge and the participation and the contribution of these indigenous people and local populations. Because the fact that you still find that forest there is because of not only the knowledge of preserving it, but even by their way of life, they live in such a way that did not destroy that forest, which was using today for the benefit of everyone. And remember, the forest we have in Cameroon is not only useful for this country, it's useful for the rest of the world.
Yeah.
That's it. The colonial mentality, colonial conservation practices were made such in a way that when the colonial master came to an environment, they secluded hunting spots and chased away, and chased away the indigenous local people from there, so that they will have their time to hunt or to harvest the resources that are there. And then each of the time they looked at these indigenous people and local populations like enemies.
All right.
But after 1990, the new environmental movement is coming, and I've written a book, a thesis on the role of traditional laws, myths and taboos on environmental protection, the case of the Wimben people where I come from. That is my tribe. So it is very, very important, and the government is fast recognizing.
Okay, Mr. Augustine, we'll come back to that. Fellow viewers, we know that you and I have to protect the environment. At times, where we live is like a taboo to ourselves. The environment so nasty, dirty water flowing behind us. We have to change our mentality and change our environment. This report will be given to us by Thierry Eba.
Jamais la ville de Yaoundé n'a connu un tel niveau de délaissement et délabrement avancé. Les nids de poules et l'insalubrité ont fait leur lit partout. L'arrondissement de Yaoundé 6e, l'un des plus importants de la capitale du Cameroun, semble être l'illustration parfaite de cet état de choses. Conséquence sans doute de l'instabilité qui a longtemps prévalu à la tête de l'exécutif communal de cet arrondissement.
Vous avez pu certainement le constater depuis que nous avons été installés. Nous n'avons pas attendu pour être au travail dès 7h30. Parce que l'un des premiers défis qui nous interpellait, c'était de reprendre en main le personnel communal. Et nous avons voulu imprimer nos marques par l'assiduité et le respect des heures de travail.
Mais après moult remous qui ont conduit à l'arrivée d'un jeune loup, aux dents très longues à la tête de la commune de Yaoundé 6e, les choses semblent vouloir bouger afin d'inscrire cette circonscription au rang des collectivités territoriales décentralisées qui osent, entreprennent et se démarquent.
Il revient à la commune, par le biais de la décentralisation, de la gestion du domaine national, du domaine public, du domaine privé de l'État. Et c'est dans ce cadre-là que nous avons envoyé des équipes sur le terrain et la campagne va s'intensifier.
De quoi faire rêver ces valeureuses populations qui ont longtemps vu leur localité abandonnée. Les travaux sur certains axes routiers et servitudes actuellement en cours ne laissent personne ici indifférent.
Ceci prouve qu'il y a beaucoup de gens qui ne s'aiment pas. Et si l'État prend, c'est une mesure salutaire parce que la vie n'a pas de prix.
Lueur d'espoir donc pour une certaine catégorie de la population qui s'était depuis longtemps plongée dans un profond sommet d'inertie, d'attentisme et d'immobilisme.
Thanks very much, Sereba, for that report. We are getting back to Mr. Augustine. Televiewers, if you are just switching on your television, this is your program, Experts. And the theme or topic of today is environmental governance. With us at the studio, we have Mr. Augustine Nyamsi, an environmentalist and an expert in environmental law. Mr. Augustine, you followed that report, and the environment in which we live in Yaoundé is very untidy. That is a report made by Tereba. As a specialist, what advice will you give to the government in order to ameliorate the situation? Is it by destroying those living besides dirty water, or looking for a solution that will bring the people out of that place?
I think that that report is soul searching, and it happens to be in a commune that I know about very well. I think this is just one of those cardinal principles.
Okay.
I stated the preamble of the Constitution.
Yeah.
Every Cameroonian shall have a right to live in a clean and healthy environment, the protection of which is the duty of every citizen. And the government shall improve on the environment.
Okay.
That's the Constitution of Cameroon. Okay? Are those citizens living in that environment? Is it a clean environment?
No.
Is that constitutional? No.
No.
That is a fact.
Yeah, it's not constitutional. That's true.
That citizen is not enjoying his or her constitutional right of a clean and healthy environment. Again, the protection of that environment is also the duty of that citizen. Mm-hmm. We now want to ask whether those citizens that are living in those areas are doing their part in protecting or improving on the environment. Those are the questions. And is the government, in this case the council, are they improving on that environment? We're not talking from the skies. We're talking on what is on the Constitution, and I repeat, by virtue of Article 65, the preamble is part and parcel of the Constitution.
Yeah.
So if you respect any article of the Constitution, you should respect the preamble.
Yeah.
So, the guess is yours. One of the things, of course, that we don't know, we live in, is ignorance.
Yeah.
According to Article 8 sub 2 of the Framework Law in Environmental Management, communities or associations that work in the interest of the public and environmental protection can act as plaintiffs in any environmental issue.
Okay.
This is something that our law gives us, that most even European jurisdictions don't give them that kind of generous locus standi. So you don't have to prove that you live in this particular neighborhood to take the council to any legal or a justice institution to compel them to clean that environment. These are things that we have to do. It is in the law. Okay? I think it is not the parliament or the president that will come and ask you to apply the law. So we need to look at these things very carefully. It is the duty of the government, and in this case the council, to make sure that that environment is clean.
All right.
We are just applying the constitution. It is also the duty of the citizen that is living there, even though they have a right to a clean and healthy environment, to make sure that it is clean. So these are some of the things that we have in our laws, okay, that we don't know, or they are not publicized for us to make use of.
All right. We were talking about, before the report, we were talking about a book you published about the laws of the country, or environmental law, that's going to help some people. So what is the book all about?
No, it was a thesis.
Okay, thesis.
On the role of traditional laws, myths and taboos on environmental protection. The case of the Wumbi people in Dongamanto division, where I come from. The premise is that we cannot ignore the people's way of life and their own knowledge, traditional knowledge in environmental protection. And giving some examples of traditional institutions that protect forests. Okay? In a community like mine, and that's what I have on the paper. If you came to a forest that has been protected by an injunction of the Ngwaro, for instance,
yeah,
all they put is a sign, is a bamboo that has been bent at the top, and then they put there, even you, the owner of that forest, cannot fell a tree without taking permission from that. Okay? It works.
I know.
If they came and found a tree that has been fallen illegally, they didn't, and they will move from hut to hut, and they saw that you've used that tree in the construction of your house, you didn't need to have been caught red-handed failing that. Okay? You are charged to pay.
Right.
In that case, if there is a forest guard, for instance, that goes back to his house in the night, and somebody fells a tree and carries it away, and the forest guard has not met the person there, he comes the next day and sees that the tree has been fallen, he will find it difficult to trace. Okay? But using the traditional institutions, if that forest was protected by the Ngwaro, for instance, they don't care, because at least there will be somebody in that community that will lick to the more on that, it's this power that cut that tree. And then when they come to you, you don't have to do anything, you have to pay. So in that case, I'm not by any way insinuating that the modern ways of protection, environmental protection, are not useful. I'm just saying that they should not ignore those that have been there and that their use have proven very valuable. So in that case, talking now about environmental governance, that is the aspect of participation.
Okay.
The principle of participation, the principle of accountability, the principle of capacity, even the principle of coordination. It's all embodied in that, in these traditional ways of life. So those are some of the things that we don't have to, kind of borrow rocket science to apply. But we should apply environmental protection and environmental governance based on our context with things that work and will continue to work.
Yes, you talked of participation and governance. That takes me to the RED Plus mechanism. And one of the things I came to understand is that those who have the rights to their natural resources and highly consented, okay, and as a specialist, you are a jurist, an environmental law expert. As a specialist, what is the government supposed to do in order that the local community be highly involved in governing their natural resources?
Thank you. I think that's a very important question, and it's a topical issue nowadays, now that Cameroon is soon going to the ERP phase of the RED process. And this is a very critical thing. If you look at the 1996 Framework Law of August 1996, Framework Law on Environmental Management in Cameroon, it states in Article 7 that every Cameroonian, every citizen has a right to access to environmental information.
Okay.
To access that information and what the government is doing to improve on the environment. That's Article 7, I think 7 sub 2. It goes further to say that the procedure of acquiring that information will be spelled out by a special decree. The unfortunate thing, and that is a very important article for environmental governance, the unfortunate thing is that since 1996 to 2018, I think it's about 21 and a half years, we've not yet had that decree. Okay?
So what can
we are going into RED process where this population need to know what is happening in their environment, in those forests. That decree, I think the draft has been sitting there for a long time. We've not yet seen. If it has been signed, I don't know. As far as I know, it has not yet been signed, but it was prepared by the ministry. It is there. We participated in the preparation of that kind of decree. That is something very important. Okay? So that access to that information by the population will not be a favor. It will be a right. And the person that is giving that information will also be protected by that law. Okay? Because most of the time we live in a context where people are even scared to divulge information that should be in the public domain. And that brings a lot of misconceptions. Some of these very noble environmental projects that we have, or processes or programs that we have, if the population that are concerned have access to information and are involved in the planning of the process, we will have less conflicts at the end of the day.
Okay.
So you ask me what should be done. I think that decree should be signed before we go into ERP phase.
All right, viewers of 7 News Television, we are going to understand why the indigenous people in Cameroon at times are not favored. They are the poorest. The resources they have, but yet they live in abject poverty. Stephanie Agnew is going to tell us more about that.
L'hôtel Franco à Yaoundé a servi de cadre pour la tenue du Forum africain sur les droits de l'homme et des peuples. Troisième rencontre du genre au Cameroun, l'objectif à thème aura été la vulgarisation des résultats des études menées, notamment sur les droits fonciers, les industries extractives et leur impact sur les populations autochtones. Aoué Bouba, experte au groupe de travail des populations autochtones de la Commission africaine, s'en explique.
Cet forum, comme vous avez vu, c'est pour présenter une étude qui a été réalisée par le groupe de travail des populations autochtones de la Commission africaine des droits de l'homme et des peuples. Cette étude portait sur l'impact des industries extractives sur le territoire, sur la vie des populations autochtones. Et on sait bien que la plupart des industries extractives, que ce soit au Cameroun, que ce soit en Namibie, en Ouganda ou au Kenya, impactent sur le territoire des peuples autochtones où habitent ces populations.
Au-delà de l'impératif de développement qui charrie les industries extractives, les bénéfices pour les populations ont davantage eu une place de choix lors des échanges avec les experts, qui ont par ailleurs tenu à faire valoir les prescriptions légales en la matière telles qu'indiquées aux articles 44, 2e tiret et 165, 7e tiret du Code minier, du Code pétrolier, afin que nul n'en ignore.
Il y a des initiatives, il y a des lois, il y a des politiques qui ont été développées ici au Cameroun. Je crois que vous avez suivi avec intérêt le discours important et très complet de monsieur le conseiller du ministre des Relations extérieures qui nous a effectivement informés sur des développements qui n'ont pas été pris en compte d'ailleurs par cette étude parce qu'il s'agit notamment de lois qui ont été promulguées ou adoptées en 2016. Donc c'est un chantier, un perpétuel développement, c'est pourquoi nous parlons de dialogue national.
Commencé le jeudi 7 septembre 2017 pour s'achever le lendemain, restent les résolutions issues de ces assises, ne se limitent pas qu'en stade de bonnes intentions.
Thanks, Stephanie Agnew, for that wonderful voice and the report you made concerning the indigenous people. It is true that some of their rights have been trampled upon and they have been sent back behind the citizenship of Cameroon. We are having with us televiewers. If you are just switching onto your television, this is your program expert, Mr. Augustine Nyamsiu, who is a specialist in environmental matters, an expert in environmental law, is going to throw more lights on environmental governance, which is the theme of today. Okay, Mr. Augustine, that report talked about the indigenous people and their rights being downtrodden or trampled upon. Before going to that report, we're talking about Red Cross or Red Cross mechanism, and we talked of ratification or decree being signed. Do you think if the decree is signed, these indigenous people will have some sorts of advantages in the environment in which they live?
I think it is a very critical role. That decree will play a very critical role. I said from the onset, I mentioned that if the Constitution calls for the participation of the citizens to protect the environment, you cannot participate when you don't have information.
Yeah, that's true.
And you cannot take informed decisions or positions when you are not privy to certain information. Okay? So, under the context now that we live, that law of 1996 gives that right for access to information, which is a good thing. But the process of acquiring that information has been put, for a decree that has not yet come out since 21 and a half years ago. I say we are now going into a phase of Red Plus. That is the final phase, the program phase of Red Plus. One of the preconditions should be the signing of that decree, so that when this indigenous person or local community person comes, sees something that is happening in the forest around them, they can have the right to come and ask whosoever that is in charge, what are you doing? What is our own benefit? Can we see the contract you signed with so and so promoter? As of right, because it is stated in the law. It is very, very important. And I say most of the problems, or some of the key problems that we have with environmental projects and programs, is just lack of information. Nobody has the bad faith to want to do something to destroy the environment or trample on the rights of the people, especially indigenous people. But just because of the fact that you don't have that urge to give them proactive and useful and timely information, when they see it at the end, they are predisposed to believe every other thing. Sometimes maybe it's not true. So why not just sign that decree? Okay? So that they know that they have the right to ask for information, and then the person, the officer that is sitting there, knows that they have the duty to give them that information. It will keep, I'm not saying that that's the magic bullet, but it will keep a lot of misconception and misunderstanding in this environmental world in which we live. Again, if you look at the guidelines or whether the safeguards that are very much are supposed to be respected to the letter, the issue of the rights of indigenous peoples is there and local communities. So there is no way you can practice Red Plus while not respecting their rights. Because they know where to go to. By the way, one good thing about this Red process, and I've said it, not only as the African representative, civil society representative on the carbon, on the FCPF, but also the whole Southern civil society representative on the fund itself, where the money is decided. I said Red Plus may not give us the money that we think as indigenous and local populations, but at least it is giving us the opportunity for governance.
According to findings, we came to notice that our country, Cameroon, has very good laws concerning the environment. But applying them is like a taboo to the administrative or the administrative authorities. Presently, environmental law experts or lecturers are having a scientific conference in the Yaoundé Hilton Hotel. And one of the problem posed is that, especially in Cameroon, the laws are there, but applying them is like passing a needle or a camel through the eyes of a needle. You are an expert. With such a situation, how will Cameroon come out from such bad governance in relation to the environment today?
I think we must also judge history in sympathy with the time. I first talked about the components of good environmental governance. The actors, the laws and the practice. We already have the actors. These are the governments, the associations, the citizens in general, and then we have the laws. Now the practice is what is the problem. I'm not playing the devil's advocate, but I also think that having those laws is a big step.
Okay.
But the laws will be as bad as no laws when they are not applied or enforced. In 2007, we carried out research on environmental democracy in Cameroon, which we published. I have a copy of that book here, on access to information, public participation in environmental decision making, and access to justice in environmental matters. And we came out with the same conclusion, that sometimes it's not the absence of laws, but the non-implementation of the laws. And we went ahead to say, why are these laws not implemented? Sometimes we sign these international conventions and we have an obligation to apply them on the field.
Okay.
And we start by putting the laws. And then at the end of the day, it becomes so costly. I'm not using my words, but words of some of the key people who say it's so costly. You know, just to have a public hearing, for instance, probably it takes some resources.
Yeah, for sure.
But that is the law, my friend. You have to apply it. Okay?
That's true.
A stitch in time saves nine.
Yeah.
So, do you want to take that time and do public consultations and have the feedback from the people before engaging in a project, or rushing to do that project while circumventing the laws, and then you end up having some protests or some projects failing before they even start up?
Yeah.
So those are some of the excuses that are given, which I think, even though as genuine as they may be, but since that is the law, we have to apply it. We have to allocate the necessary resources to apply the laws. And you know, there are some areas in which we are not legislating enough. While suffocating some areas with more legislations or regulations or decrees and arrêtés. Meanwhile, if we just apply those we have, probably we should have solved 70% of the issues that are coming on. So grosso modo, what I will try to say here is that let's learn how to apply our laws. And application of environmental laws is not a joking matter. The ministry or the institution in charge with applying those laws should be well endowed with the necessary resources and the capacity to apply the laws. What is the budget of the Ministry of Environment and Nature Protection? Is it reflecting the kind of work they have to do?
Yeah, that's true.
So that they will not have an excuse tomorrow to say we don't have the means to do that.
Yeah.
So those are some of the questions that the policymakers, the leaders of the country, should look at and make sure that the institutions, especially coordinating institutions in environmental matters, should be endowed with the capacity and resources to apply the law for the good of the environment and the citizens.
That is good. Governance, environmental governance. And we are living in a country or a continent where environmental pollution has become the order of the day. We need help from people, experts like you, to drill us on the ways to follow to avoid this environmental pollution. You are an expert in environmental matters.
coming back to the laws again.
Yeah.
When you talk of pollution, for instance, you're only thinking of the garbage on the streets,
Right.
the dirty streams that are flowing. But do you know another pollution that is well regulated in the law of Cameroon, the 1996 Framework Law on Environmental Management?
You are an expert. That's
It's
why.
noise.
Okay. that's
It's noise pollution, my friend.
Interesting.
Yes, it is well regulated in Cameroon. But when somebody is playing their music at the top of the speakers, there you come and tell them that you are disturbing.
I know.
Because I don't know whether they have some kind of authorization. The question I ask myself, how can you have an authorization to pollute? Okay?
Okay.
So those are some of the things. Those things are in the law. We don't need to legislate on that again. It's just to apply the laws.
All right.
Okay? So what I would like to say as far as pollution is concerned is that we should apply the laws, whatever it takes,
Okay.
because the laws are there.
That's good. Applying the laws. That is something interesting. Applying the laws, no matter how painful it might be to some people.
Yeah.
This now leads us to the reports made by Amang Tepono concerning COP23, how Cameroonian youths were being prepared for the COP23 that passed in December. Amang Tepono.
Ils sont jeunes. Ils sont venus des 10 régions du Cameroun. Ici, sur les hauteurs du mont Kolniada, au palais des congrès de la ville aux 7 collines, l'association Jeunesse Verte du Cameroun, en collaboration avec la fondation Konrad Adenauer, sous l'onction du ministère de l'Environnement, organise en leur intention l'atelier national de formation des jeunes négociateurs climat, en prélude à la COP23 prévue dans les prochains mois en Allemagne.
Je suis très honorée non seulement d'avoir eu la participation des jeunes des 10 régions du Cameroun, mais aussi d'avoir eu derrière nous tous ces experts qui vont renforcer et donner du contenu aux jeunes ambassadeurs climat que nous allons désigner à la fin de cette rencontre et de cet atelier de formation des jeunes du Cameroun.
Les représentants du gouvernement camerounais, visiblement très enthousiastes, à l'idée de voir ces jeunes impliqués dans les recherches des solutions concourant à la préservation de l'environnement, ont profité de l'occasion pour indiquer que l'initiative avait toute l'attention des hommes de Philémon-Yang.
Leur mission, la première, est d'abord de comprendre de quoi il s'agit. Ensuite, c'est dans leur communauté, dans leur région, d'être des personnes qui vont être des modèles sur ces questions. On parle des changements climatiques, certes, mais il faut bien comprendre et il faut donner la possibilité à nos mamans, à nos papas, dans les villages, à nos chefs traditionnels, de comprendre de quoi il est question. Et je pense que la jeunesse et les jeunes ambassadeurs sont les premiers piliers par lesquels ce message devrait vraiment passer.
Konrad Adenauer, organisation gouvernementale allemande, spécialisée en politique climatique et sécurité énergétique en Afrique au sud du Sahara, était en plein dans son élément.
Je pense que l'intérêt d'inclure les jeunes est bilatéral. Les jeunes avoir un intérêt et un droit de participer dans les négociations. Le dialogue est clé pour donner une voix à la génération de la future du continent africain.
La COP23 chez nous, comme ils disent, se tiendra, nous l'avons indiqué, en Allemagne. Reste à espérer que ces jeunes issus d'un pays parmi les moins pollueurs de la planète puissent avoir un jour les mots pour convaincre Américains, Chinois et Français, et même ces autres Allemands, à adopter des comportements plus sains pour le bien-être de notre planète.
Thanks very much, Amang Tepono, for that report. Televiewers, we are coming to the end of this program. Before we say goodbye, I would like Mr. Augustine, who is an environmental expert, to tell us now the government is taking part in the REDD+ mechanism. Within a few words, what do you advise the government to do in order to help people enjoy their natural resources?
Thank you very much. I think REDD+ is just one tiny part of fighting climate change. Okay, and it is a good thing that Cameroon is part of this process. It's very important. We have the forest. We have what it takes to participate fully. But REDD+ is a mechanism that, if it is not well applied, can be of great disservice to the people it intends to help. I remember the government officials of the ministry usually say, for Cameroon, REDD+ is going to be a tool for its development.
Okay.
So it should be practiced in a way that respects governance principles with the participation of everybody. That is going to be very useful.
Thanks, Mr. Augustine, for being our guest this afternoon. Fellow viewers of 7 News Television, we have come to the end of this program. But I will not end it completely without appreciating the technical assistance of Mr. Heve Ubele, Mbala Stefan, Guy Aveni, Joseph Menduga, Gustave Kamwa, not forgetting Roland Amana and Thierry Ndamba. Have a wonderful day. Do not go away, as the next program, Elite Plus, is coming up. It's our sport program. I believe you watch it. Thanks very much for watching 7 News.